Welcome back. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health diagnosis, the experience of receiving a diagnosis, what a diagnosis can mean, and just unpack that a little bit through personal experience and understanding to come at some meaning. What is it like to have a psychiatric diagnosis? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Does it empower? Does it give knowledge and skill to navigate your life, or is it something that can be harmful? So, a diagnosis is something given usually by a psychiatrist. It is a label that attempts to describe your mental health symptoms and your mental health diagnosis from supposedly a scientific and objective point of view. It's a label imposed by authority. You can't argue with a diagnosis because you don't have all of the degrees and skills and experience of a psychiatrist. You're not allowed to diagnose yourself, although people do this all the time. And once given, you'll find a psychiatric diagnosis sticks around often for life. Paradoxically, diagnoses usually change, though you'll start out with one, then you move on to another one, then you move on to another one, and eventually you'll get your final diagnosis, the one that hopefully works best. And that's as your doctor sees more symptoms and more sees how you live and react in different contexts and situations, they'll be changing and refining your diagnosis. I suspect there's also a complex interaction between medication and diagnosis. If they find you respond to particular kinds of medications, then that might give them a clue that their initial diagnosis wasn't correct. An example being someone who's diagnosed with depression, put on antidepressants, and they go manic. And then the doctor says, oh, well, that's more of an indicator of bipolar, because depressed people don't generally go manic, but a bipolar person can be triggered into a manic phase by medication. In my own experience, what I came to realise is that my psychiatric diagnosis doesn't change me one bit. It doesn't change who I am. It doesn't change what has happened to me. It doesn't change what I experience. It doesn't change the symptoms or my hope for the future or what I am capable of. There's often, when someone receives a psychiatric diagnosis, a grieving process that occurs. The person grieves over their lost life, their lost possibilities. Their families and carers may also, be in grief, all of those stages of grief, anger, denial, and these grief can come out in quite intense ways. What I realised in my own experience is actually the label doesn't change me. I haven't lost anything. I'm not different. But again, it is that feedback loop that I talked about. One of the effects of mental illness or I don't like the word mental illness. I'll talk about that in another video. But one of the effects of it is receiving a psychiatric diagnosis. But then that psychiatric diagnosis in itself and the grieving process that results has the potential to change how we see ourselves, change how we behave, change, it may throw us into a period of grieving and depression, which may be seen as further mental unwellness. And yet it's a result of receiving a diagnosis, which is in itself a result of being unwell. So the causes again become the effects, and the effects become the causes. The diagnosis doesn't change you. If I label you a duck, that doesn't make you a duck. But we have to be careful. We have to be very careful about how we talk about people in mental health, because people are vulnerable and they can and do take on a sick identity, which is, a sense that my role is to be unwell, that's all I'll ever be able to do. A hopelessness sets in. It's part of the sick identity. But the thing to keep in mind is that the health system, Centrelink and the NDIS, the government power structures that provide help, require people to have a sick identity. They require people to have a diagnosis. They require people to perform distress in socially appropriate ways that are understood by the power structure. And this is enormously destructive. So family and carers and peers, we're already fighting an uphill battle to hold hope and to believe in a positive identity for people. And this is one of our most important tasks, to be non-judgmental, to provide a relationship, a space for safety and trust, and to hold a positive belief in people's identity and potential, whatever they may be labelled with or diagnosed with. Thank you.